Good morning. Welcome to SUNUP. I'm Austin Moore. As summer draws to a close, it's time for wheat producers to make decisions about what variety to put in the ground. But as producers weigh their options, there are some laws to consider. For more, here's SUNUP's Lyndall Stout.
As we wind down August, Oklahoma producers are starting to think about getting their wheat planted. Joining us now is Jeff Edwards, our small grains extension specialist. And Jeff, let's start out with what you're hearing from producers.
Well, producers are making decisions right now about what wheat varieties they're going to plant, hearing a lot of good things about them incorporating some new varieties into their programs, which is great news. And they're trying to secure their seed and making sure that they have adequate seed to plant this fall.
And when it comes to selecting the seed, there are some guidelines and some laws that you get questions about.
I get a lot of questions this time of year about the Plant Variety Protection Act, which is typically just called the PVP Act. Most of our wheat varieties that we grow now are PVP protected. Even as far back as Jagger, the varieties are PVP protected, and that means they can only be sold as a certified class of seed. So they can't really be transferred from farmer to farmer or planted as bin run seed. They can only be sold as certified seed. And there are penalties for violation of the law. Whoever has the licensing agreement on those varieties can pursue legal action against people selling those varieties not as a certified class. There have been settlements anywhere from $20,000 to over $100,000. So it's a real serious issue.
It sounds like it, and then there are other people who may be potentially involved in that workflow who could be liable?
Absolutely. Typically when I talk with producers, in thinking about the law, they typically focus on the person who is selling the seed. But as the law is written, the person selling the seed and the person purchasing the seed, if they're in violation, could be involved in the lawsuit. And if you really wanted to get technical, anyone else who got involved in that transaction, maybe someone cleaning the seed, weighing the trucks, if they knew what was going on, they could be put in the lawsuit as well. So it is a really serious issue, and just because you're the purchaser doesn't mean that you're exempt from the law.
And what are the exceptions? If you're using your own seed, there's some areas there.
Right, that is one common misconception. A PVP protected variety, you can save that seed to plant on your own farm in your own operation indefinitely. There's no issue there. You just can't sell it to anyone, you can't trade it to anyone, you can't sell it standing in the field. I get all kinds of questions about ways around the law, and there really is no way around the law. Even if you're saving your own seed, I would recommend that each year you plant a certain amount of certified seed to save for the following year, so that your seed that you're planting is no more than 1 year away from certification. That's just a good management practice to incorporate.
And then there's some economics to think about in that as well?
Well, typically our farmers, or sometimes they think of the farmer saved seed as being low cost. But really, when you put everything into it, it's not free. It has a value. Whatever the market price of wheat is, let's say $8 this past year, you're going to have a good $2 or $3 in cleaning charges and shrinkage, things like that. So you can easily have $10 per bushel in farmer-saved seed. You can typically buy certified seed from anywhere from $12 to $15 per bushel. That's less than 1 bushel per acre, typically about a half a bushel per acre. On most operations, having certified seed, good quality seed, will make them an extra half to a bushel per acre at least, so it pays for itself.
Let's talk about seed a little more and get into some of the varieties, and there's a variety in particular that there's some questions about regarding this rule.
Well, the Clearfield varieties would be one exception to what we just discussed. And the clearfield varieties, there's a gene in those that confers resistance to imazamox or imidazolinone herbicides, and there's a utility patent on that gene. And this would be similar, although they're not GMOs, this would be similar to what we would have with Roundup Ready. And with a clearfield variety, you have to purchase new seed every year. You cannot save that seed back to plant on your own farm even, so you'd have to purchase new seed every year with a clearfield variety.
Okay, and then in terms of other varieties that you're talking about and looking at in the future?
Well, speaking of clearfield, we've got a new clearfield variety out there released from OSU just this year. Double Stop CL Plus is the name of it. It's a 2-gene clearfield wheat, which is going to allow you to add methylated seed oil into the Beyond herbicide. And what that does is gets you much more activity on feral rye. Still not going to be as good as winter canola, but if you're locked into a continuous wheat system, it's going to allow you to tackle some of those problem weeds, and it's going to do a much better job on feral rye and jointed goat grass and some of those problem weeds than you could do with the 1-gene varieties. We're really excited about it. Performed very well in our variety test this year.
And it is still kind of in the pipeline though, not wide availability yet?
Not wide availability yet. For the first year of release, there's quite a bit of seed available relative to what we've had with other varieties on their first year of release, but it's going to be pretty tight this year.
And then just kind of a final word of advice for producers as they're gearing up for this kind of exciting time for the year.
It's an exciting time. At no time during the year does that seed or that wheat crop have more yield potential than when it's still a seed. You still have all of that genetic yield potential contained in there. So what I like for growers to do right now is be making plans for what they're going to do throughout the year to make sure they capture as much of that genetic yield potential as possible. Are fungicides on the table? That's something you really need to consider right now before you choose a variety. Are you willing to spray a fungicide? What's your fertility program? Those are things that you really need to be taking in consideration and making those decisions right now.
Okay, Jeff Edwards, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks a lot.
And speaking of varieties, it is a busy time of year for the folks at OSU's Foundation Seed. Growers have a lot of questions about supply levels.
Going into this production year, we weren't really sure. Last year, coming off of a 2-year drought, we thought we were going to have a pretty good supply of seed, but then we got hit by numerous late freezes in April, so we weren't sure what kind of supply we were going to have once harvest did come. As it turns out, we had as much or possibly even more seed under certification than we had in the previous year, and the previous year was a record-breaking year for us. It was the largest year for wheat acreage under certification in the history of this program.
And if you're buying certified seed, keep this in mind.
They need to make sure that they get the PVP document signed that has a sticker, has the certified seed label affixed to that document. Both the buyer and the seller sign that. It designates, informs the purchaser of that seed exactly what they can and can't do with that variety of seed.
For more information on varieties, contact your local county extension office or visit our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
As we begin this fall calving season, one of the questions that will arise for many producers during the course of calving is how long should I watch and wait a heifer or a cow that's in the throes of labor, or what we would call stage 2 of parturition? Well, there's actually been some research done that gives us some guidelines to look at as to how long we should wait before we bring the heifer or the cow in and intervene. You see, research was done in Montana and here at Oklahoma State University that looked at what we call stage 2 of calving, and that's defined as starting when we first see the appearance of a water bag, and it ends when there's a complete delivery of a baby calf on the ground. In Montana, they looked at both mature cows and first calf 2-year-old heifers. and here in Oklahoma we had data on 2-year-old heifers. In the case of those mature cows, those that had had calves before, and that pelvic opening has been stretched, those cows, if they're going to have that calf unassisted with a healthy result, a healthy cow and a healthy calf, on the average, that stage 2 only took 22 minutes. In the case of the first calf heifers, then it was much longer. Obviously, those tissues have to be stretched, and it's going to be a longer delivery time on the average. In the case of Montana, it was about 54 minutes. Here in Oklahoma, not much different. 55 minutes was the average time that we found for those first calf heifers. So now we have our rule of thumb that we can work with. As we're watching a cow that's laying down and straining, if it's a mature cow, if she's not delivering that calf in about a half hour, then we probably need to check and see if there's a reason why she's struggling, and we need to provide some assistance. In that first calf heifer, then give her an hour. And if she's not making real progress in an hour's time, then my recommendation would be to bring her in, examine to see if there's a problem that you can resolve, give her some assistance. Identify quickly if that problem is so great that it's going to be difficult for you to handle, and call your local veterinarian as quickly as possible in those situations so that they have the best chance of giving you a positive outcome of a healthy cow and healthy calf. Follow these rules of thumb, and I think they'll help you save a few more calves. And if you'd like a little more information about working with cows and heifers at calving time, go to the SUNUP website, look under links. There you'll find a link to our brochure. It's called Calving Time Management for Beef Cows and Heifers. It's extension circular 1006. Has a lot of information about working with these cows and heifers at calving time. Hey, we look forward to seeing you next week on SUNUP's Cow Calf Corner.
There's a lot of potential for change in the market this week, and Kim, let's talk about that. What's going on?
Well, there's a lot happening in the market, but there's not a lot happening to prices. You look at the corn crop, we may be fixing to harvest a 14 billion bushel corn crop here in the United States. They're already cutting in extreme parts of southern the United States. You've got reports in Canada that they're fixing to harvest the biggest wheat crop in the last 20 years. That's going to bring some protein on the market to compete with ours. They're talking about a record canola crop in Canada. Reports this week said that Australia's crop is going to be below average, or the odds are it will be below average in less than the last couple of years. You just got a lot going on around the world that has the potential to impact price, but there's just no price movements. We've had that Kansas City Board of Trade December and September contracts moving in about a 20 to 25 cent price range since late July.
Okay, that is a lot to take in. How is the market reacting to all that?
Well, like we said, there's just not much happening. What I'm concerned about is looking at the Kansas City Board of Trade December contract that the market will be rolling to relatively quick. Mm-hmm. It's been probably twice the amount of time on the bottom part of that sideways movement as it has a top, and it's like a goat pounding against the wall. It just keeps hammering against that bottom, that support price down there, and it's leaving the indications, at least to me, that we might break through that. Next week, I think, is a very important time for that.
Okay, now you've always talked about the December price being about 7.25, and June price being around 6 or so. Are you staying with that?
Well, I still feel relatively comfortable with that $6 June of 2014 price. It may be slightly higher than that. The market's offering $6.50 to $6.60 for those forward contracts. But looking at December and that 7.25, I think I'm less certain of that than I was, say, last week or even 2 or 3 weeks ago, because of that Kansas City Board of Trade December contract hitting that low part and possibly breaking through it.
Okay, so as we move forward, what should producers be thinking about the 2014 crops?
Well, right now, I think they should just forget about price. I think they need to concentrate on producing a quality product, whatever it takes to do that. They need to manage their costs. That's where the biggest part of their profit's going to come through. And that doesn't mean cut back on the inputs. That means buy them smart, use them only if they needed used, make the investment wisely. I think they need to look at crop rotation, cleaning up the fields, either going with the clear field wheat to get the rye out, or rotate with canola. I think that it's a managing costs and managing production is more important right now than what the price is going to do. I think price will take care of itself.
So basically, take care of the crop and let the price worry about itself later.
That's correct.
Okay, Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. What a mild weather week. Maybe you don't think of mild when high temperatures for the day, like those on Tuesday, were in the upper 80s to upper 90s. But for Oklahoma in August, the word mild fits. We are seeing some dry areas pop up in the state. Along the Red River in the brown map areas, plant available water amounts in the top 16 inches of soil have dropped below an inch for a number of locations. A Keach-Byram Drought Index map from Wednesday afternoon shows the drier locations in shades of orange and red. Antler is the driest at 616. The green areas have excellent moisture, with the Keach-Byram Drought Index numbers mostly below 100. Plants in Oklahoma are growing fast and are drawing an estimated 2 to 3/10 of an inch of water per day across the state. 2/10 in places on the east side. Water demand gets higher as you move west with warmer temperatures, higher wind, and drier air. Here's Gary with good news on our drought situation.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Al. It's great to be back on SUNUP. As usual, let's start with the latest U.S. Drought Monitor map. As you can see, much of the state is now out of drought, most of the eastern 2/3 of the state. We do have some areas of abnormally dry conditions across east central and southeastern Oklahoma, a little bit in south central. But we saw more improvements up in the northwest in Woods County, but we also saw some worsening down in the far southwest, so Jackson and Tillman counties, and I'll show you why here on the next couple of maps. Lots of rainfall over those last 90 days. Statewide average of about 13.7 inches. That's 3.4 inches above normal, so really great rainfall. But down there in the southwest, only about 4 to 6 inches of rainfall through that entire period. And as you can see on the next map, the percentage of normal map, 120 to 200% of normal, but only 40 to 80% of normal over that time period in the southwest. But most of the state, really great rainfall over the last 90 days. Let's finish up with the U.S. Seasonal Drought Outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. This is good for through the end of November, so basically the current period through the end of November. We do see much of Oklahoma remaining out of drought with even some improvements in the far western parts of the state up into the Panhandle. Now they see drought persisting or intensifying up in the western 2/3 of the Panhandle. We've already seen a little bit of relief since this map's been released, so hopefully that can continue, but all conditions point to by the end of November still most of the state being drought free, so certainly great news there. So lots of great news this week. Still need some rainfall down in southwestern Oklahoma, out across west central areas, and especially out in the Panhandle. But hey, with all the rainfall we've seen lately, we'll take it. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
This summer's rains have been a welcome sight across Oklahoma, but that's not to say they haven't ushered in a few problems. For more, we head to the North Range.
The good thing about a drought is nothing grows, including brush. It just doesn't grow well. When we get all these good rains this year, here comes the brush.
Oklahoma State University's North Range Research Station has received more than 9 inches of rainfall in the past 30 days, more than 37 inches for the year. This rainfall was sorely needed for the ponds and native grass, but it has caused a surge of brush, normally controlled through prescribed fire.
The challenge with us here, like most other ranches, is that we're just not always able to burn in the time window that we'd like to, whether it's from lack of fuel or from a burn ban, the conditions, whether it's too wet or too windy or whatever. And so, we're just not always able to get one in.
We know from over 30 years of research whether it's in western Oklahoma or eastern Oklahoma, it doesn't matter, that 3-year fire frequency is kind of the tipping point on brush control. If we can burn on the average of every 3 years, this brush will never increase. It'll kind of stay where it is. If we burn more frequently than every 3 years, like every 2 years or annually, we'll really reduce the brush. The thing about prescribed fire is, like with stocker cattle, we can expect a 10 to 15% gain just from the fire. But you don't get that with anything else, and particularly related to the cost. I mean, there's nothing that takes the place of fire.
But the drought of the last 3 years left the grass grazed down, so there was little fuel for fire. And even when there was grass to graze, burn bans prevented the practice, and the burn cycle was broken. When the rain finally came, so did the brush.
This is sand plum. This is a plant that occurs usually in thickets. It doesn't expand very rapidly. If you burn it very much at all, it pretty much goes away. It doesn't respond real well to fire.
Without fire, though, herbicide is the next control option.
You can see this plant was sprayed several weeks ago, and it's browned up really nice. Right here we have a plant called Mexican plum. It's the same genus as sand plum, but it makes kind of a small tree. It doesn't form big thickets. It's got a very rough and hairy leaf, and it's pretty hard to control. You can see, though, we did get some control where the herbicide hit, but not over the whole plant. Very likely this won't kill that plant because the whole plant needed to be covered. Right next to it is buckbrush, which is a plant that's very easy to control if we catch it early in the spring right after it goes to full leaf. You have about a 2-week period you can hit with it, and 2-4 deal to kill it deader than a hammer. Anytime outside that 2-week window, you can't hardly touch it. Right next to that, Sericea lespedeza, which is one of the main things they're interested in trying to control out here. Got real nice control on it. And what we like to see on herbicide is those plants to gradually yellow over a 4 or 5 day period. If you use a high rate and don't stick to the label, if you go off label and use too much herbicide, you'll tend to incinerate these plants, burn the leaves off of them, and they won't control it at all. So this is what we like to see.
Typically with Sericea, we start those applications around June 15th and they'll conclude around August the 15th in a typical scenario. But this summer, because of these environmental conditions, we're going to extend that season probably into September. We ordinarily want to wait until Sericea has bloomed out. That's kind of the ideal time for making herbicide applications. And because of the mild temperatures, the extra rain, we're going to be able to make those applications just because physiologically everything was set back about 2 to 3 weeks early on, and sometimes it's up to 4 to 6 weeks behind a normal year.
Trent Inman with Dow AgriSciences tells us it is key to understand what plants you have and which ones you want to control.
Yeah, it's really important to identify what you have, and then at that point, then you can match the best herbicide solution with that weed or brush problem. Because unfortunately, we don't have one product out there that's kind of a one-size-fits-all cure-all, if you will. And sometimes it takes a tank mix or a concoction, cocktail, if you will, to answer all of those woody species problems.
So by using a combination of fire and herbicide, the North Range is hoping to spring back from drought with stronger and cleaner pastures.
Hopefully we'll be able to leave enough forage in these pastures for fuel for prescribed fire next spring, and if we can get some of these invasive species controlled or killed, maybe they'll burn next year also to further enhance our control program when we use a prescribed fire.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. Today we want to talk about a little tip about getting out a bolt that's maybe broke off in a kind of a hard to get to spot.
You know, we've talked before about, drilling bolts out to put easy outs in, blah, blah, blah. But here's a little drill guide that may help you get your drill bit in the center.
Basically, you just take a bolt that's going to match into that same hole, drill a hole through it, and now you've got just a jig or a guide to keep your bit centered as you try to reach into that spot.
So, for example, we've just got this for a little show and tell here. We've got a bolt, and let's assume that it's broke off down in that nut. You can put this bolt with the hole in it as your guide, and then hold it and then drill down through it, and that way you're in the center of your bolt.
So just a little tip on trying to get out that bolt that might be broke off. We'll see you next week on Shop Stop.
As you prepare to hunt your dove fields in September, there's some things that you need to know to make sure that you're being legal. Dove are a migratory bird species, and there are special regulations about hunting them, as waterfowl similarly. With doves, we can manipulate a standing crop to hunt the field, so we can mow, disc, burn, graze, etc. You cannot do those things for waterfowl hunting. You can flood a field for waterfowl, but you can't otherwise manipulate that crop. But for both waterfowl and dove, what you cannot do is you cannot harvest that crop and then redistribute it across the field. You can also not bring in additional crops and just distribute them across the field. All right, we can't create piles or just spread seed across the ground. Those are not legal practices. The only exception to that would be is if you're actually planting something for a winter crop. You need to be really careful and make sure the way you plant the wheat, for instance top sowing, you need to make sure that that is considered a bona fide agricultural practice for your county. So check with your cooperative extension office to see if top sowing wheat is legal. In some areas it is considered a normal agricultural practice, in some areas it is not. So if it is not a normal agricultural practice for your area, then that would not be considered a legal field to hunt doves over. So be sure to check federal regulations for specifics before you start manipulating fields for hunting migratory birds over.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can watch all of today's clips on our website, sunup.okstate.edu. Also, check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and now Instagram. For all of us here at Oklahoma State University, have a great week, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.